After Karol Nawrocki's victory in the presidential election, Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States, quoted a comment from the American station Newsmax. Trump ally wins in Poland, shocking all in Europe. Congratulations, Poland, you picked a winner. Marco Rubio, the head of American diplomacy, also spoke about Nawrocki's election victory. Congratulations to President-elect Karol Nawrocki on a hard-earned victory as a new chapter begins in Poland. Together, the United States and Poland will forge the most ambitious alliance in our shared history on defense, energy and commerce.
Stosunki polsko-amerykańskie.
Polish-American relations have their best days ahead of them. A new chapter in our mutual relations is indeed beginning. It is no secret that Karol Nawrocki's victory means continuation of President Andrzej Duda's policy of exemplary Polish-American relations.
Nie mam żadnej wątpliwości.
I have no doubt that President Trump will continue to invest in this relationship in some way, at least in terms of image. If so, this is good for Poland because the United States is our most important ally. It would be very disadvantageous for us if Rafał Trzaskowski were president, and relations with him were as tense as with Donald Tusk. Karol Nawrocki's victory in the race for the presidential palace also means the defeat of Donald Tusk's policy.
Jest to dalsze obniżenie.
This certainly further diminishes the status and importance of Donald Tusk among those European politicians who sought to push the United States out of Europe and strengthen German dominance in its place. It seems that Donald Tusk, after Trzaskowski's election defeat, would rather Poles forget that he is one of the leaders of European plans to push the United States out of the old continent. Karol Nawrocki said very clearly, for Poland to be safe, it must have strong transatlantic relations. No to NATO bis. We are in NATO. America is in NATO. The vast majority of European countries are in NATO. NATO needs to be developed, not some additional structures created. This is very good news. Polish-American relations have been saved. They will develop very well. Interestingly, after the elections, the participants of the coalition led by Donald Tusk seem to have forgotten about the plans for the so-called independence of Europe without the United States. Personally, I have never felt or perceived this as pushing the United States out. I would say quite the opposite. I have not heard anyone say that they want to push the US out. Rather, I have heard Prime Minister Tusk say that this alliance is strategic for our security. The United States is our most important ally, especially in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and I hope that these good relations will continue. The Polish president will keep an eye on Donald Tusk's government to ensure that these relations are as good as possible. But of course, the president cannot replace the government. It is the government's policy, a policy directed against the United States, a pro-German and therefore anti-American policy. That is and remains a problem for the security of our homeland. Even during the election campaign, during his visit to the White House, Karol Nawrocki sought to promote Polish interests. Karol Nawrocki will certainly strive for the best possible relations with the Americans. We already have the beginnings of this because even during the campaign there was a direct meeting. It is not often that the incumbent president receives a candidate in the Oval Office at the White House, but it was clear that the Americans were focusing on the centre-right in Poland, and they were not mistaken. That is why, shortly after Karol Nawrocki's visit to Washington, the United States lifted the restrictions imposed by the previous Biden administration on the transfer to Poland of the latest American technologies used in the creation of artificial intelligence. Karol Nawrocki's presidency will also focus on these modern technologies. He is a man who understands modern technologies, which is why he talked about issues related to modern technologies while he was still campaigning in the White House. The question is what will happen after the elections to the ideas promoted by Brussels, Berlin and Paris, such as a European NATO bis without the United States, or a mythical European army that is supposed to protect the Union from Russia. Plans to push the Americans out of Europe to differentiate themselves from them will, in my opinion, be implemented. This is in the interest of those parts of Europe that have a different geopolitical position from Poland and different interests from Poland. I hope that this will end as soon as possible, but this requires a Prime Minister to resign, because so far there are no European soldiers permanently stationed in Poland. Only thousands of soldiers from the United States. The balance of power between the United States, Russia and Europe is clear. If we want to save Europe, defend Europe from the Russian threat, an alliance with the United States is necessary. And any ideas of strategic autonomy, that is breaking away from the United States, are simply a mistake. Poland is essential for the Americans to simply stay here. That means that we are once again playing an extremely important geopolitical role. One thing seems certain. Karol Nawrocki's victory will mean a rapprochement with the United States and, perhaps, the beginning of the end of Donald Tusk's pro-German government.